move his hand off the doorknob, grab the doorknob, and I just walked right into Vince's office. Wow. And I leaned up against the door so nobody could get in.
Wow.
And I just blurted it out. I said, Vince, I know you're splitting Cade and I up. I said, I sing karaoke and I don't know what we can do with it, but I'd like to implement it into my, my gimmick.
Yep.
And he caught me off guard and he's like,
what's up, Bengal fans? It's your host, Joey Karni. I want to thank you for clicking on this video. It was an amazing experience and I can't wait for you to see the full interview. Now, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below your favorite part at the end of the video. Now enjoy the show.
Let's go, let's go!
Ladies and gentlemen, I am here again with a very special guest. He is the current NWA National Champion, Trevor Murdoch. How are you doing? How's everything going?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk wrestling during these crazy times that we're having right now. I'd like to begin the interviews, especially with everything that's happening today. How is everything happening or going with you during COVID? How has your training been affected? How has your work been affected? How has your life been affected?
Right now, like on the training aspect of it, I can't get to a ring and a gym right now, so I'm doing what I can here at home. On the work end of it, I've always had a shoot job. You know, it's just in my nature. If I've got free days at home, I'm not a big fan of sitting around. And when COVID hit, they had to lay me off from that. And that was understandable. You know what I mean? There's a lot of guys that depended on that job solely on their income to feed their families. So it was more important to take care of those guys. But other than that, everything's been pretty good. I just want to get back in the ring. You know what I mean? Right now with COVID, everything's kind of put a hold on that. And I'm ready to get back in the ring, get to wrestling. I had a huge momentum swing, and then when COVID came, it just kind of shut all that down.
Of course. I've been watching you with NWA. I think seeing you, honestly, when NWA first came back about a year or so ago, seeing all the people that were signed, because there was no press release as to all these guys and girls were signed. It was kind of surprises as the show went on. And seeing you on there, it really shocked me in a good way, because I had missed you or missed seeing you in the ring for so long that I was like, oh my God, like, your persona itself, I think, fits the NWA. Your style fits the NWA, more of that old school country boy style. So I thought it was a perfect fit. I was glad to see you back in there, and along with everybody else the NWA signed. So it was really fascinating to me to see really the NWA come back together again. What were your thoughts on that whole process?
In the beginning, NWA, I was kind of on my way out. I was dealing with some things with Harley, as his health was declining. And I was virtually kind of about to hang up the boots, and Harley had passed away. And a representative, the world champion, the real world heavyweight champion, Nick Aldis, and at the time, executive producer, Dave Lagana, showed up to Harley's funeral. And after the funeral, they both had a conversation with me and kind of convinced me to come down to do one show. And they were smart enough in the fact that they knew if they could get me for one show, that most likely I would be, bait and hook. I'm in, and I was. You know what I mean? It was a first show. And from there on, I was like, yeah, if we're going to roll with it, let's go.
Of course. And I'm always so fascinated with origin stories. I know that you were trained by Harley Race. How did you first discover pro wrestling, and then how did you end up breaking into it?
My earliest memories of watching wrestling was when I was a kid, waking up on Sunday mornings watching world-class wrestling with the Von Erichs, and Gentleman Chris Adams, and Iceman King Parsons. And I I would always been fascinated with pro wrestling. Just the fact that those guys would be able to uh, uh, take a crowd, have them literally in the palm of their hands. You know, when they wanted them to go up and cheer, they were able to do it. When they wanted them to boo, they were able to do it. It was really fascinating to me, and it was something I'd always wanted to do. But at the time, there wasn't like it is now. It wasn't then like it is now, where there's a ton of wrestling schools to go to at the very least get your feet wet and find out if this is something you want to do. So I had went to Job Corps and I became a certified welder. I was building railroad cars and decided to move back home. I was living in Georgia, decided to move back home. And my brother had met up with a guy while he was working at his factory job who was an independent wrestler. And that guy trained him. So when I moved back home, they needed a security for their shows. Of course, I loved wrestling. Of course, I'm going to do security. I've been blessed with the fact that I've always been really tall. So the promoter, it may not have been a good business for him, but the promoter found it entertaining that the security guard was bigger than most of the wrestlers walking out to the ring. And before the show and after the show, those guys would get me in the ring and they would do all their new moves on me. You know, I was a big guy and I was really athletic. So they really enjoyed doing all their big moves on me. And one night and this is before I met Harley, the promoter, a wrestler didn't show up. And the promoter was kind of frantic looking around and he looked right at me and he goes, you know, you've been training, you're going to wrestle tonight.
Wow.
And I had my first match and I was under a hood, you know, and I got my ass kicked. And from then on, I was never security. I was in the ring and I did that for about 2 years until I met Harley. And I had him watch one of my tapes and he proceeded to tell me I was the shits. And I was, you know, and it kind of just blossomed from there. He was, you know, starting up World League Wrestling and he was opening up a school and, you know, he's like, hey, you want to come down? And I happened to be me and another guy were the first 2 students at Harley's camp.
Wow. And, you know, speaking of Harley and the NWA title, I feel like it's everything now is kind of full circle for you in a way, in a sense.
Oh, sure.
What was it necessarily that caught your eye other than the producers and the Real World's Champion, you know, kind of hooking you in? What was it about the NWA that really caught your eye?
I've always been a fan of the NWA because of Harley and just being with him for so many years and loving what the NWA represented. But for me, like once I had that first show and I got to talk to the agents in the back and I got to talk to the powers to the B in the back, you know, with NWA, there is, how can I put this? In wrestling, we tend to micromanage and we feel like we have to, you know, not step on anybody's toes. And we get told a lot in some areas, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, all while you're trying to have wrestling matches and create your character. When I got there to NWA, there was none of that. It was, Trevor, here's your match, go out and do what you do. And we'll let the chips fall where they fall. If the people are loving you behind you, then we're going to go that direction. If you're drawing, you know, more heat than anybody else, we're going to run that direction. But you go out there and just do you, and we'll literally just go from match to match and let it create itself, you know. And that to me was very powerful because I haven't had that on I hadn't had a lot of that in major promotions. Right. So to have that freedom and to have that confidence in me to go out there really got me fired up and really, you know, made me feel like I was part of the team and I wanted to do better. And I did, you know, every time I stepped out there in the ring, we stepped up to another level.
Of course. You know what? And hearing you say that, it's exactly what I saw while watching NWA Powerrr. You can see every week the show getting better, the in-ring action really getting, I don't know, more entertaining. It was just from the beginning to where it is now. It was just spectacular to watch as a wrestling fan, especially not having that experience for quite some time. A lot of fans now being introduced to a different style in NWA. It's a studio audience. There is no pyro, there is no music, there is no bells and whistles, so to say. It's promos and it's wrestling. It's real wrestling, and I think that it's something that the wrestling fans needed, because today we have so many different options as to different wrestling companies, and to have NWA such a unique style, I think is probably one of my favorite aspects of wrestling. I know that Harley.
It's a very understandable wrestling program. Like you said, it's very broke down and basic to the point where there's nothing to draw your attention away from what's going on except the action in the ring.
Exactly.
And the fact that we're able to take a match and then build more onto that match and build more onto that match and more, in my opinion, is what helps you as a fan and me even as a wrestler get excited about what's happening, because you completely understand what's going on. You're with that wrestler through the whole ride. On top of the fact, there's not 40, 50 guys. I'm not saying there's not 20 or 30 guys coming on your program where people get lost. Everybody has their moment to shine. And when you allow a wrestler to have its moment to shine and spotlight them, we are proof that people get over. It's not hard. You know what I mean? People tend to make it harder on themselves than what it really is. NWA wants to deliver a wrestling program that makes you feel good, that you understand and get behind the wrestlers, not characters, the wrestlers. And when the fans get behind them, they can see that wrestler progress, and sky's the limit, man.
Yeah. And from what exactly you're describing and from what we're seeing, a lot of the superstars in NWA are, being talked about mainstream professional wrestling conversations today. It really did boost, I think, a lot of minds when it comes to the different styles in pro wrestling, because we're so used to seeing, WWE. Now we have AEW, Impact, all these different companies, kind of doing their own thing, but really in the same category. NWA is in like a class of its own, doing its own thing, getting people over. People like such as yourself that we've seen before in other companies, now doing really what you want to do and getting it over. So I think I love watching it.
Well, I like it.
Yeah. You were fortunate enough to have Harley as your trainer. Safe to say he's been a significant part of your career. What was the most important thing that you learned from him?
It's when you're with somebody for 15 years, it's hard to nail down any one thing that stood out. For the simple fact is he had his hand in everything. I brought everything to Harley. You know what I mean? Any questions, any concerns, it didn't matter what part of my career I was in, whether I was wrestling for him full time or I was in Japan or in WWE, I always brought it to him. But one of the things that stands out was that he always, from the day that I met him, he always said, the cream will rise to the top. Be the best wrestler. Put on the best matches. Don't worry about your character. Go out there and have the best match. If the people are still focused on the finish at the end of your match, if that's all they care about at the end of your match, who won or lost, then you didn't do your job with the time that was given to you, whether it be 15, 20, 30, whatever minutes. You didn't go out there and get the match over. And that's something that's always been seared into my brain, even and I've always kept that philosophy, even at times when it didn't either make me look good or I was being sacrificed for an angle. I had no problem with that because we were getting the match over. If you look at any of my WWE stuff, anybody who's ever been to a WWE house show and saw me on those house shows, they saw two completely different people. Because with TV, you were so constricted, you were told to stay in one lane, whereas house shows, they didn't care. and we had way more reaction. Our house show matches is what carried me and Cade and I throughout our career, because we would get over so well at house shows, but they just wouldn't, I guess, let the reins go with us on TV and see that same reaction. So I've always had it just seared in my brain to go out there and do whatever I got to do to get the match over and have the best match possible, because that's what the fans are paying for. They're paying to be entertained, and if I have to sacrifice myself for us to get to that point, then I'm willing to do it.
Of course. And now that you're holding the NWA National Championship, pretty significant piece of history, pretty significant piece of NWA as being one of their top leaders in their organization right now. What does it mean to you to hold that championship, especially being trained by Harley, being around that unique piece of history, the NWA title and things like that? What does it mean to be a champion for that organization?
I hold a lot of pride in what I am, especially being the national heavyweight champion. I've been champions at other companies, but for me, this company represents me the best. You know what I mean? Everybody says, Trevor, you're a perfect fit for the NWA, which I am, but the NWA is also a perfect fit for me. Being the national heavyweight champion, especially after you look at like you were talking about with the lineage of all the guys that held that title, to say that I'm up in that history, to be a part of it, is almost surreal. But also in the same sense, like there's a lot of, what's the word? What am I looking for? Like I have dedication. Like I'm champ now. I'm the motherfucking champ. And I gotta represent. I gotta go out and put in the work. And there's already been a lot of guys that think that they can already knock me off the mountain, making calls to the office, trying to bide for a position to have a match with me. And I thoroughly look forward to everybody else trying to take something away, take this away from me, of anything. You know what I mean? I'm going to scratch and crawl and fight and do whatever I've got to do to make sure I hold on to this, the National Heavyweight Championship, and make it mean something, so that when people see that championship, my name is linked to those guys like Nikita Koloff, Larry Zbyszko, some of the greats.
Yeah. And it's probably one of my favorite titles. When NWA first, resurrected itself, and I saw them bringing back all their championships, it was nostalgia, but it was also a sense of like, I don't know, there's some excitement to it, because you see these titles that in WWE, and they're all blinged up and they got all these colors, but these, to me and a lot of wrestling fans, I think, are the real heavyweight championships in professional wrestling, the ones with the most lineage, where you can look back years ago and it's the same design, that we see today. And I think there's just more, I don't know, there's more, I'm trying to find the word. There's more excitement, I guess, around it, to see it being passed around today in such a wonderful way.
Those championships are authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not
the word, yeah.
They're not something that was changed throughout the years. Even I bring up WWE, and they have a lot of lineage with their world title, but even just the look of it, like you were saying, has changed with each person who had it. And I feel like there's a disconnect. There's an authenticity lost when they do that. Yeah. And like you said, that you can look at my national heavyweight title and look back in history and see the greats that wore that championship and that were champions. And it makes you feel like you are truly seeing history happen in front of you.
Exactly. And that's like what I keep saying. NWA, it highlights all of that, but also in a modernized way for today's generation of wrestling fans, where they can understand it. And yep. I think that's probably the best part about NWA in a whole. But I do want to touch on, obviously we jumping around to your WWE days. You were a part of so many entertaining feuds with great teams, the Hardy Boys, DX, Big Show and Kane, Rosie and a Hurricane, Crime Time, and so many different other teams that were there. What do you think was probably your greatest feud as a tag team in WWE?
In WWE, I'd have to put the Hardys. That was, they gave us 3 pay-per-views in a row with those guys.
Yeah.
We were able to, at that point in our career, able to tell a story with those fellas that was a little different, even though we wanted to get more in depth and be more creative with it than what we were allowed to. Those guys really let us shine. They could walk out to the ring and the people go nuts. Like their music hits, go nuts. So those guys knew they were over. They gave us an opportunity to get in the ring and made us look like $1 million. But then we talk about guys like you brought up DX. That's a whole nother level of just over. And you know what I'm talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're in the ring and you hear the DX music hit. A part of you reverts back to the 13, 14-year-old little boy at home going, oh, yeah, this is so cool. And then at the time, the 25-year-old's looking down the ramp going, I'm about to square off with these motherfuckers. This is amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's it just takes you to a whole nother level. And with working with those guys is where I felt like we really got the international notoriety, because as soon as those guys get in the ring, all eyes are on them.
Of course. In today's generation of tag team wrestling, I think tag team wrestling is probably one of the most highlighted aspects of pro wrestling today. During your run as a tag team there, 3-time tag team champion, WWE World Tag Team Champion, obviously with Lance Cade. I think for a long time, they were trying to find their way with their tag teams. You have Rosie and the Hurricane, excuse me, and Big Show and Kane. And then you have these 2 country boys really with great tag team dynamic, real friends in real life, being the world tag team champions. What did it mean to be the top of the division at that time?
At that, that was my first national title that I had won. So, of course, I was excited. The first time I won it, I drove, I got home, I kissed my wife, and I went straight up to the training school, and I laid the championship on Harley's desk.
Yeah.
Just to show him, the gratitude and how much I was thankful for his advice and being my mentor. But also in the same sense, like, you're the world tag team champs. Like you're going to be a part of everything. And that's when, like, the roller coaster really picked up for us, was as soon as you have those championships, you're a part of every media, all of phone calls, the autograph signings. And so our schedule tripled, and even after we lost the belts the first time, we stayed on pace. And when we weren't on TV, we were on house shows. It's just, that's the one good thing I can say about WWE is they had us working a lot.
And you can see today, we have teams like FTR, formerly known as the Revival. They follow the same style you guys did, that old school, hard hitting, aggressive country boy style, which I think is really cool. And again, you continuing that style in the NWA and from your days in WWE, what was the most important part of kind of staying true to your roots in a sense, following your that character?
I've always it's always the most important thing to me has always been to make them believe, and to figure out different ways to make fans step out of that realm of disbelief and have them step into my world. So at times, man, and I brought this up earlier, I'm willing to sacrifice myself, whether it be to take the shot to the head that I know is going to hurt,
Yeah.
or to take a bullet if that's what was necessary. It's my job is to go in there no matter what and make you believe in me and what I do. And sometimes you don't, you know, just the littlest things can make people go, holy shit, that looked like it was really real. Like he was really hurting him, you know. Yeah. That's my job. You know what I mean? It's my job to make the fans question what's going on in the ring. And usually, if I can get them to question whether or not the aggression that's happening in the ring is real or not, I usually have them. I can carry them for the rest of the story. And sometimes that is at the sacrifice of my opponent as well too. When I'm very when people step into the ring with me, you know, I mince no words. You know, I'm a heavy hitter, and if you don't bring it to me, well, I'm just gonna beat the snot out of you. It's just how I was trained. You know what I mean? And that goes back to my Japan days too. You know, I lived in Japan for 6 months and went through the dojo, 500 squats a day, 300 push-ups a day, 100, 150 bumps a day, 4 and 5, 20 to 30-minute matches a day. Wow. Over there, those guys, you know, if you don't fight back, they're going to get you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and it's just something I've kind of carried with myself, and it's worked.
Now, during your run with the WWE, they kind of had you and Lance kind of break up in a sense, and you went on in the singles run with the country singing gimmick. And I feel honestly that was really underrated because that was some entertaining stuff that you did. How did that come about? Who came up with it? What were your thoughts on it? Like the whole process, I think is just so interesting.
Cade and I had gotten the word that they were going to split us up, and we had already been through that a couple times before. So this time we wanted to be a little bit more proactive in the fact that, okay, if you guys are going to split us up, let's figure out what to do with us so we can just move right into that transitional period of singles wrestlers. And Cade and I were out in the ring, just sitting up in the bleachers like we'd done probably 100 times. And we were talking, and, you know, Cade brought it up. He goes, we would go to bars and, you know, in some of these towns, and there'd be karaoke there, and I'd get a couple beverages in me, and I'd hop up on the karaoke stage and sing and just have a good time. And he brought that up to me. He goes, man, you ought to sing, you know, do something with singing, you know. And I got it in my head that I wanted to sing my entrance music to the ring about my opponents, though. Like Cena used to come out and rap about his opponents and kind of bury his opponents in his rap. And I thought, wow, I can do that. Not so much on a country version, but singing my music, you know. So I'm determined, you know what I mean? I'm walking around, someone's gonna hear this idea, you know what I mean? And I realized the only person who's gonna really do anything with it's Vince.
Yep.
So I proceed to track Vince down, and it was, you know, Vince is a very busy man and constantly has people around him. So to get a private one-on-one with him is difficult at times. So I stalked him as he's walking all the way back to his office. I seen one of the riders was like trying to get in there right behind, and I had to literally like move his hand off the doorknob, grab the doorknob, and I just walked right into Vince's office. Wow. And I leaned up against the door so nobody could get in.
Wow.
And I just blurted it out. I said, Vince, I know you're splitting Cade and I up. I said, I sing karaoke, and I don't know what we can do with it, but I'd like to implement it into my, you know, my gimmick.
Yep.
And he caught me off guard, and he's like, really? Sing me a song. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I still to this day cannot remember what song I sang. Obviously, it was probably something that was just on top of my head. But we got done, and there's like this 30-second pause, but it felt like forever, you know. And I get the God damn, Trevor, son of a bitch, that's fucking good. Fuck, why didn't you fucking tell me about this? God damn it. We'll put this on fucking TV next week. Fuck. And I'm so happy that Vince didn't just look at me and go, you're a fucking idiot. That was horrible. What are you doing? I was so happy. I was, thanks, Vince. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for listening to me. You know what I mean? I walked out the door, and I was like, hell yeah, I got something going. And I was like, but wait a minute. I never talked to him about what I was going to do with it. And I never got back to him. I was never able to get another one-on-one with him. And sure enough, that next week after my match, I'm standing up on the announcer's table singing to Cade. And when I got there that Monday and they told me what I was going to do, I had a couple different songs in my head that kind of fit Cade and I starting to split up. You know, the verbiage at the very least would come across and the people would understand what I was singing and what I was singing it. But Vince didn't know any of it. Like, he didn't know any of those songs. He's not a country guy, you know what I mean? And he's like, oh, fuck, Trevor, we can't do that. We got to have a song that everybody knows, you know. We got to have something that they can all come up with you. And I sarcastically threw out Friends in Low Places. I was like, you mean something like Friends in Low Places, man? You know, something? And he's like, God, perfect. Fuck, that's it right there. And fucking walks away. And I'm like, oh, okay. Wow. All right. You know, and you know, sure enough, you know, I had the match and got up on the stand, you know, the announcer's table and sang. But the problem with those kind of ideas is if you don't follow up on them and you don't talk to the writers and push to Vince that this is the direction you want to go with it, people tend to put their own spin on it.
Of course.
And before you know it, I'm singing to the makeup lady who's not even, she's like shaking her head at me and rolling her eyes. And it just became stupid.
Got it.
To the point where I was like, wow, fuck this. You know what I mean? And, you know, it wasn't too much longer after that, I'd gotten the call and they released me.
Yeah. I remember you were drafted to SmackDown, and I think they had you a couple times on there, and then I don't know what it was. They released I think it was a bunch of people. I don't remember exactly how it was. But you were part of that, you know, that unfortunate list. What did that, what was that mindset, you know, getting that call? Did you have any ideas or?
No, I had no clue. But the one thing, like anybody I've ever talked to that's ever gotten released knows when that phone call comes. And sure enough, like I seen Johnny Ace is the one that called me, and I seen his number pop up. I was busy at the time, and I seen his number pop up on my phone and left a voicemail. And I looked at my wife and I was like, something doesn't feel right about this. I was like, and Johnny's called me before 100 times, you know what I mean? And never had I ever felt that way. But there was just something about this, man. And sure enough, I called him back, and he said that, you know, the WWE didn't, the writers didn't have anything for me, and that they were going to go ahead and execute their 90-day early out clause. And, you know, I thanked him and hung up the phone. And for about 15 minutes, I wasn't like frantic, but I was freaking out. It's the number one company in the world. And I just got let go. Like, where do you go from there? You know, there's no number one, you know, there's no like 4 number one companies. They were it. So I freaked out. And, but then after about 15 minutes, like this wave of calm came over me, because I started thinking about, I was in the pattern of WWE going, shit, I gotta go somewhere. I was used to being on a schedule,
of course,
almost every day for 4 years. And I was still in that mindset. And after about 15 minutes, like, I'm like, oh, well, wait a minute. I don't have to go anywhere. Like, nobody can tell me what to do. Like, I'm back to being, I'm my own man again, almost to a certain extent. You know what I mean? And this wave of relief just kind of, okay, now we can take a step back, analyze, you know, this whole situation, this whole thing, and go from there. And you know, I've been called back one time to get looked at, but other than that, I've never called them. I've never made advances to go back. It's just, I did it. It was cool, but that's just not the life I want to lead. That's not the type of wrestler I want to be.
Of course, no, I can respect that, and I'm feeling, at least today, that's a lot of other people's mindset too going forward, especially everything that's happening with the pandemic. You know, them releasing a lot of people. I spoke to a few earlier this year, and they had the same type of mindset where they had that sense of panic for a minute, and then they realized, you know, there's other options.
Yep.
You know, and you got to respect. I respect you for that, for the way you handle that. So,
thank you.
And then you have the shock of Lance, kind of coming out of nowhere. If you can talk about it, what was your perspective on that? I'm losing Lance.
I had gotten woke up at the time. I owned a bar and grill, and I had one of a wrestler that actually trained who was on the back end was a chef, was actually my head cook, my kitchen manager. So I wake up and my wife and my kitchen manager at the end of my bed, and my first words out of my mouth was, "What happened to Harley?" Because at the time Harley was up there in age, and it just he was, in my opinion, like if something was going to happen, it was going to be him. And they said, no, nothing happened to Harley. Something happened to Lance. And I said, what happened? And they said he passed away. And I was still half asleep, and I just took it as a joke. I was like, that's a fucked up joke. Like, you guys shouldn't even play like that. Like, I'll get out of bed, but don't even play like that. And I looked at my phone like I do when I wake up every morning to check the time. And there was a text from HBK, and it said, "Call me now, kid." And I called him, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, what's all this shit about? I hear about Lance passing away. I mean, the guy's 29 years old, great physical shape." And I'll never forget the words. Like he said, he's like, "I'm sorry, kid, but he's gone." And I've said this, I've told the story before. I dropped to my knees and I bawled, like I couldn't control myself. I couldn't understand it. Like, this is I have two best friends in this world, and Lance was one of them. My kids called him Uncle. He had been to my home for holidays. When we were tag team champs, we wrestled for Harley on Harley shows. I'd been to Cade's house for holidays and dinners, and met his grandmas and his sisters and all his nieces and nephews. We were best friends. And it totally knocked the feet out from under me. You know what I mean? And we got all the funeral arrangements, and it was my wife and my kids drove 18 hours straight to San Antonio. It's kind of like my last ride with my buddy, and still to this day, I get choked up just talking about it. I miss that dude so bad, man, so bad, because on just so many different levels. I miss talking to him about my kids. I miss talking to him about wrestling. He was one guy that I could go to, and if I could go up to Lance and I'd be like, "Hey, man, I just killed this guy," and he would be like, "Where are we hiding the body?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very rare you have friends like that.
And he was a brother, so it was hard, man. And I still struggle with it. I don't quite understand it.
Of course.
He's got two beautiful little girls that are living today that talk about him all the time. And just an amazing talent in the ring too. Like, he's super underrated. That guy's 290 pounds and moved like a cruiserweight in the ring, and could wrestle anybody and make anybody look like $1 million, and still make himself look great too. The wrestling business really lost a fantastic wrestler.
Of course, and I remember when that was first, when the news first broke. Being a wrestling fan like myself, it was a shock, because it's not a name you would ever expect. He was so young. You just didn't expect it, and especially with all the star power that I think everybody saw in him, especially during his WWE time. Playing different characters, whether it was you guys together or his singles career, there was almost like this, like there was star power in him, and you knew it. And it was just a matter of time before, they were going to be like, all right, this is the guy. At least in my eyes, that's how I felt. Right. He was able to do everything.
No, that's how I felt
too.
You
said his size as well, just the full package.
I agree. All right, man, I got too many more questions. My phone's about to die on me. I got about 10% biggin, so.
Got it, man. No problem. So we're talking, we're going to jump back to, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk about Lance. I know you said it's not something easy to talk about. But the NWA National Championship, we're seeing today a lot of NWA stars make the jump over to AEW to represent that brand. Is that something you think you'd see yourself doing, or have you been asked to do that?
I could definitely see myself doing that for a couple shots. I would really like to work with FTR, whether it be tagging with them or tagging against them. I think that we could create some amazing matches. Again, I've actually, contacted a couple of those guys and just, been like, hey man, it'd be badass to have a trio of old school, like, the Freebird days. If that happens, that'd be awesome.
That's awesome. And I always ask,
I'm still going to be a fan of those guys. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So
there's a question I always like to ask my guests at the end of the show. And it's, when you wake up in the morning, before you even remember your career and your life and everything that you've gone through, what's the first thing that you can say that comes to mind that you would want your legacy to be? That first thing that comes to mind that's so selfless that, if you were to leave today, this is what I want to be remembered for.
I made them believe. You know what I mean? Like, I made people truly question what I was doing in the ring. I know we talked about it earlier, but there's a certain power in the fact that when I walk out of the ring, people are they're afraid that they might get the same person. There's no difference from Trevor in the ring, Trevor outside of the ring, and yeah. they're really, it's the truth. You don't see, there's not much difference in me. I'm a very black and white kind of guy. Be nice to people, treat people right. Don't, you know what I mean? Be good to people, and I expect that in return. And that's how I treat people in the ring. And so if anything, at the very least, I hope that people carry with them, like, that guy made me fucking believe, like, I would not with that guy. You know what I mean? I wouldn't push that guy. I wouldn't, because that's the real power, is because if they believe me outside of the ring, they believe me inside the ring, that means I can carry them. Still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, there was a disconnect there. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. And the last question, the return of NWA. What do you know? We know it's coming. What can you give us?
Man, I can't give you much of anything, to be honest with you. It's not that there's not that I don't know. It's just, to be honest with you, we want to when we do come back full force, we want the fans to go nuts. And so we're trying to make sure that everything we do is safe, first and foremost, for the wrestlers and for the fans. But also, in the same sense, we want to give the same product we did before. You know what I mean? We don't want to water it down. It's hard to wrestle with no crowds. As a performer, it's the shits, man. Because you play off those people, you feed off those people. Not having them there, you're at a huge disconnect on some things. But all I can say is keep watching, guys. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
Awesome, man. And I know you're on social media. Where could the fans go check you out to follow you?
Guys, check me out. I'm on Instagram, on Twitter, @RealTMurdoch. And, of course, I'm on Facebook, man. Ain't too many people trying to be me. So you go on there and look. I'm on there.
Awesome, man. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk. It was a pleasure speaking with you. It's a pleasure to hear about your career. I'm excited to see what's coming next with the NWA, but more importantly, what's coming next with you and the NWA National Championship. I want to thank you for coming on. Trevor Murdoch.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Take care, buddy.
You too.